Hi, everyone. So in this lecture, we are going to learn about reproducibility and how you could structure your code so that your machine learning project can be reproduced by you or other people who read or build on your work. So quick overview, we will learn about reproducible research and why we need it. And then we are also going to learn what to write to make our work reproducible. So this is essentially writing good documentation for your project. And then we're gonna see how we can write and organize reproducible code as well. So here I asked perplexity.ai that what is reproducible research, and I'll just read it out and describe what's happening. So reproducible research refers to the idea that scientific results should be documented in such a way that their deduction is fully transparent. It is the ability of a researcher to duplicate the results of a prior study using the same materials as were used by the original investigator. So it basically means that when you're working on your project, you are the original investigator, and you should document your project in such a way that it can be easily duplicated by someone else who is reading your work, or maybe someone who's building on your work. Reproducibility is closely related to replicability and repeatability. Reproducibility is important because it allows other researchers to analyze the same data to get the same results as the original study, which strengthens the conclusion of the original study. So, for example, you come up with a new architecture or a new learning algorithm, and you test it on some data sets. This should be easily reproducible when you do the same experiments again. So this will basically strengthen the claims that you are making in your main paper. To address reproducibility issues, researchers can use text editing and collaboration tools, create well-written master to-do files, and use GitHub repositories to make research reproducible. So here is basically means that whatever you do in your research project, you basically summarize all the steps and the technical details so that someone else can easily build on your work and get the same results as you did in your main paper. Like the results that you reported in the main paper should actually match the one when we reproduce your work. Now, why we need to ensure reproducibility? First of all, it's, as it says here, it's good science and good citizenship. So it basically means that, let's say you're working on a software project, like specifically in our case, a machine learning research project, and you make your work reproducible. So it's easy for other people to actually use what you have built so they can build on your research. This is something as we refer to as open source, where we build something and we make it public for others to use or build on. And there's a flip side to this as well, where you could also use your own research to build on it. Like, let's say you work on a project and you want to extend on this project. If you have good documentation and ensure good reproducibility, you can easily build on the work itself. So that's where repeatability comes in. So what actually goes in structuring your code for reproducibility? For first, it will be the intro for your research. It's basically a summary of like 3 to 5 sentences or less, which would say what this actually is. And then you would add the necessary instructions to set up the working environment. Let's say if you're using Conda or pip, you would add instructions on what are the exact commands that we need to write in order to create the working environment on the other user's machine, like when they are reproducing your work. And then you would also, like if we're talking about a machine learning project, ideally we have a bunch of data sets that we used to tend to work with. So we would also have the details on how to get the data set and prepare the data set for training. After that, this would be followed by how to run training and testing scripts. So this basically reproduces the main results in your paper. For example, in your paper, you have a big table showing the comparison with other works and showing that your ones are better than the other ones. So when you run the training script, this result should match the one that you have in your main paper. So that is where the reproducibility part comes in. So when other people try out your code, they should get the same results. And then we could also add pre-trained models to make your results more trustworthy. So for example, in your main paper, you discuss about the model that you propose and show that these are the results. So you could actually, instead of just adding the code, the training and testing code on that data set, like you have to train the model to get the result, you could actually add the pre-trained model itself in your documentation so that other people can directly use the pre-trained model and run it on the test data set to get those results. So they don't actually have to train the model itself and then test it to match the results in your paper. You can have the pre-trained models available. They will just download the model, run it on their data set, and then they would have the results that you have in your main paper. So it's always a good idea to have these pre-trained models available. And you could also have a demo of your work. I'll quickly show an example. So a demo could be something like this, which uses Hugging Face spaces here. It's basically a grad.io application of a image classification model that shows that when we feed in images, it's going to give us a prediction of what it is. So here I'm going to go over a template that I have built so that anyone working on machine learning research projects could use to ensure reproducibility and have like sort of a good documentation for the project itself. So if you click the link over here, it will point you to this site. Here, I'll just go over the README where this is the name of the project and you add the details of the author. And then you also have the links over here, which point to the paper, the project. It is the project page if you want to add one. This is the demo, and this is for the citation. So here you basically add the main title of your paper followed by a figure of your architecture or loss function or learning paradigm that you are proposing, which will end this short section with a summary of what this project actually is. And then over here, we define the dependencies, the specification of dependencies, which basically mentions the Python version, the CUDA version that you're using. And then how do you actually create the working environment over here? And you could also create a fresh environment using the commands here. So this is up to you. You could either add an existing environment so that either you in the future or the readers could recreate the working environment, or you could add the commands for them to install a fresh environment for themselves. After that, we have the training code, which basically discusses at first the data sets that we are using and how to pre-process the data sets. So any instruction related to data sets or pre-processing goes here. And then we finally train the models on that data set. So here in this example, we're using two data sets. So it has two different training experiments. The same goes for the evaluation, where we have two data sets. We basically evaluate the trained models that we have. And any other necessary detail, such as the supplementary material or any technical details, you can add them over here. And on the following section, you could have the list of pre-trained models that you are using. So it's basically a simple table which has the data set, the architecture, the accuracy, and the link to the pre-trained model. And these numbers here are the ones that you would have in your main paper so that the readers could easily understand that, okay, the model that the user is, the reader is proposing in the main paper is actually this one, the pre-trained model. So anyone working on your code or building on your code could simply download this model here and do the evaluation itself. And it would give this exact result here. So this is what it means that when we say reproducibility, this is what it actually means. And then you could also add a demo to the demo link here, which would point to another website, which would actually show your model, like how to use your model. And then we have the citation, which would refer to the main paper itself. And after that, you could add some project notes. So this is mainly, I always do this for my own project. So it's always good to have like a time and then a short description of what it's going. So looking back, it's easier to track how your project is progressing, or maybe if you're changing your project directions, it's a good idea to have this one as well. And finally, we would give the acknowledgements if we build on other code bases. So it's always a good idea to do that. And here I've also added some resources for reproducibility, and you can check these out in these links here. This is another example of a project website. In addition to having a good README or a good documentation, you could actually build a project website, which would look something like this. So this is for one of my own projects where I have added all the necessary links here, the poster, videos, paper, GitHub, and the demo with the information of the conference that it was published in, and some short descriptions on basically how to interpret the results, the abstract, what is the method, and then finally the paper and supplementary material. So it's a really simple website, but we could have all the important links here instead of just simply using the GitHub page. But if you're getting started, it's always a good idea to do this GitHub first. And then if you think that you need to extend on it, you could consider making a project website like this. So here are some other links that could help you understand more about reproducible research. I'll just quickly go over them to show you an idea. So this is the machine learning reproducibility checklist. So it basically mentions that for a paper, when you submit your code, these are the things that you should have. So here it says for all the models and algorithms, it should have clear descriptions, the analysis, and then for the data sets, and then for the code, it should have the dependencies, training, evaluation, pre-trained models, README. And there are some other details on experimental results as well. And this is another link, which was the second one. So this basically shows what you actually need to have in order to submit to this conference. So ideally, they want the papers that should have these structured code bases. So these are all the details that you should have. You can see it is very similar to the one that I did. So basically, I took inspiration from this one and built on top of this. And here are some examples you could also go over to understand what these reproducible research code bases look like. And finally, the last link is basically a blog post, which shows that how you could deploy these models, these trained models using Docker. So I've worked on a specific application here, which is for object recognition. So it basically goes over how to build Docker images and make it work with image recognition models. Docker is another useful tool that you could have, that when you are basically building a model, you could wrap it around Docker so that it is easily reproducible in other cases as well. And thank you.